Good morning. It's May 9th, 2022. Welcome to Triggered. I know it should be a spring episode, but it doesn't really feel like it out there. Global warming has brought us about 6 inches of snow on the west side and south side of the city, but I'm assured spring will be coming eventually. I'm Cory Morgan, by the way. So, yes, lots coming up this week, lots of issues, lots of news to cover. I want to keep you appraised on important observances as they come along, too. So, today is officially Lost Sock Memorial Day. So, again, somebody has recognized the plight of all those socks that disappear, and they've set up a Memorial Day for it, for all those people with those lonely single socks. Today is the day to observe that. Or if you're really rebellious and like to live on the edge, a true libertarian observation, it's the Tear the Tags Off the Mattress Day as well. May 9th is Tear the Tags Off the Mattress, even though it's prohibited by law. If you want to live on the edge, today's the day to do it. Okay, this is a live show. Comments are welcome, guys. We go back and forth. I see Claudette there in the audience, and this is part of what makes this show great, being able to have that interaction, go back and forth. I welcome comments, questions, critique. It's fine. Won't necessarily respond to every one of them, but I certainly read them all, and it does help model the show. It makes it worth the challenges that come with going live is having that interaction and ability to go back and forth with you. So I got a couple of great guests coming up today. I have retired paramedic Brian Winter. He's in Cochrane, and we're going to talk about the state of Alberta's EMS system. And he's had some good proactive initiatives going in Cochrane to try and deal with this and things such as that. And I see the news today on the weekend in Calgary. The EMS state of affairs got into a terrible crisis. This is across the province, but there were no ambulances available. Firefighters were waiting as much as 2 hours for an ambulance to show up at emergency scenes. It's just disgraceful. Then I'm going to have CPC, the Conservative Party of Canada leadership candidate, Joseph Bourgault. He's been on the show before. I should say aspiring candidate, I guess. He got disqualified. They haven't been quite clear as to exactly why. He apparently met all of the bars for running in the party leadership race. So perhaps he could shed a little more light on what it was about, and we'll see where it goes from there. So let's talk about some of the things and how we're saving the world from global warming. Yes, as we can see from all that snow out here. Well, be careful what you wish for. So after years of effort by environmental activists demanding we leave oil and gas in the ground, they've worked. As Canada sits on some of the largest oil and gas deposits on Earth, we're still importing oil from nations such as Saudi Arabia and Venezuela. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is still blinded by, green ideology, and he won't even consider talking about expanding Canada's oil and gas production and export capabilities. Furnaces across the West are fired up today as a typical mid-May snowstorm has slammed us out here in Alberta. And the price for gasoline across the country is now averaging $1.97 a liter, and it's expected to rise. Now, it's absolutely absurd that we're letting world energy prices impact the standard of living for us all when we shut in our own resources for alternative sources of energy that don't viably exist. Energy impacts the cost of everything. Every consumer good we use is transported at some point using petrochemicals. The products likely used hydrocarbons as part of their composition, and fossil fuels are used in every aspect of food production. If we really do want to battle the pressures rampant inflation is putting upon Canadians, the first thing we should be doing is expanding our hydrocarbon production as much and as quickly as possible. Instead, Canada's Environment Minister is demanding energy companies invest their current profits into green energy projects. It's outright idiotic. Minister Guilbeault was silent, of course, when oil and gas prices plummeted and companies were losing billions of dollars. Some people like to point out that we're bound by world prices and it won't matter how much we develop domestically. Now, that's sort of a half-truth. For one, if Canada ramps up production and exports of oil and gas, it will put a degree of downward pressure on world prices, albeit in a limited and small way. With the mess going on in Ukraine, the upward pressure is going to continue, and we're going to see prices continue to rise. But still, if Canada's bringing in large amounts of royalties from energy production and taxes from people working in the energy sector in the field, we'll have room to drop the taxes and fees upon domestic consumption of energy that contribute to the high costs. Carbon taxes, GST, other taxes on energy are draining Canadians dry. The government has to stop punishing Canadians for consuming products that we can't avoid. We're a winter nation, and the majority of us get our heat from petrochemical products. We're also a large nation. We have to use vehicles to get around. $70,000 Teslas with a limited range aren't realistic for most of us. We're also an agricultural nation. The carbon taxes, fuel taxes, and now taxes are looming on fertilizer even, are preventing us from enjoying more affordable food products, even though we, again, have some of the largest agricultural lands on the planet. Most of all, we're just a ridiculous nation for allowing an ideologically blinded federal government to put us into this position for so long. Windmills and solar panels are decades away from replacing petrochemical energy sources, if they ever will at all. As the world recovers from the pandemic, Canada should be one of the best placed nations to be able to bounce back and even prosper. Instead, we continue to handicap ourselves with bad policies. We don't need another national energy program. We don't want to go down the road of nationalized energy production. We've already seen how well that served Venezuela and the government-owned Petro-Canada. It was a disaster. All we need is for the government to get out of the damn way. The world wants our products, and investors will happily spend money getting those products to market. Until the government ends its crusade against fossil fuels, however, we're going to remain an investment pariah. Canadian citizens are going to watch their standard of living decline while they literally sit upon a veritable treasure trove of energy resources. So how long is it going to take for Canadians to wake up? How expensive will everything have to get? I fear the answer to that. As long as Central Canada continues its love affair with Trudeau Jr., things are only going to get worse. Quebec truckers have started protests, over high costs of operations due to government policies. And while other truckers have been labeled as evil incarnate by the government, Quebec does hold a special status. So maybe there is a glimmer of hope out there. As soon as Quebec votes drop, Liberals tend to pay attention. Sad, though, that it has to come to that. Hopefully, I guess Quebec can stand up for the rest of us, and we'll see what happens. That's what's got me going today as we're looking at this cost of living and inflation issues going on. Just a quick rant to fire things up. So let's bring our news editor in, Dave Naylor, and check in and see what else has been happening out there in the world. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
Good, Cory. That was a bit of an ugly shock waking up today, wasn't it?
Oh, man. Winter just drags out to the bitter end.
It was terrible. And I hear you had a different kind of feline visitor this weekend, not the normal cougar one.
No, we got a bobcat, or maybe somebody put the cougar in a dryer and shrunk it or something. But I hadn't seen the cougar in a few days, and now we got the bobcat wandering around back there. It's been a lively spring for creatures behind my house. We've always had a number of them, but the cats are really on the move this year.
Yeah, well, I don't think Duke, the wonder dog, would have any problem with a bobcat. So I'm glad. Hopefully, the cougar has moved on.
We'll see.
Anyways, in the news today, lots of stuff already up on our site. Led off with a Linda Slobodian column on the UCP ballots, talking to Rick Orman, who is the official overseer, I guess, of the balloting on Jason Kenney's leadership. He says he's absolutely convinced of the integrity of the vote once the ballots get into the hands of Deloitte, who are basically counting them up and running it. But of course, there's a long process before that happens. I guess that's the part that's in question, Cory. We've got Dr. Theresa Tam confirming 1/10 of the federal civil service, who had amongst the highest vaccination rates of anybody. 1/10 of them got COVID, came down with it despite the immunization standings. I think it was something like 97%. Other stuff, we were highly entertained, Cory, by the Conservative leadership debate. And the one candidate who didn't show up there is claiming victory. Patrick Brown, who was too busy selling leaderships in Atlantic Canada, says he won the debate by not even showing up. And you can, he called it, he didn't want to participate in, quote, eye-rolling political theaters. So that was his reasoning for winning. Other stuff we've got, the kids playing lacrosse are having a tough time this year, Cory, because there's not enough lacrosse referees. So apparently games are being canceled left, right, and center. So if you know anything about lacrosse and you want to go refereeing, make some extra money, please do so. Member of Parliament, MP James Bazan, some interesting comments today, Cory, about demanding the RCMP reopen the investigation into the Prime Minister's visit to the Aga Khan in 2016. And he says if the RCMP don't want to lay charges, they'll bring the OPP in to see what they have to say about it. You thought we were in for a bad weather day today, Cory? All the people in Manitoba, northwestern Ontario, more snow, heavy rain, flooding. They're getting the whole kit and caboodle out there. Blacklock's Reporter's got a story on the number of periodicals in Canada going down by 9%, despite more than $300 million in subsidies. So all that taxpayers' money is not saving all the periodicals. And that's it. We got, Scott Moe in the Middle East opening up a new trade office for Saskatchewan in Dubai. So lots of stuff up there already, Cory. Lots of stuff coming this afternoon. And hopefully the snow is all gone from my car when I get out there.
One can hope. All right. Well, thanks for checking in. I'll let you get back on to battling that new website format. I mean, it's coming along. We do have a new platform, and it's going to be really good once we get her there. But just some patience for the readers, getting used to things. And for us, we still have a few wrinkles to iron out, but it's going great so far, kind of.
Yeah, my technological skill involves turning something on, turning it off again, and then hoping that fixes everything. So it's all fun and games for the time being.
Right on. Okay, thanks, Dave. I'll see you after the show.
Thanks, Cory.
Great. That was our news editor, Dave Naylor. And yes, lots of stories on the go. As I said, we got the new site. It really breaks things down regionally, and it's helping us out a lot. We're just figuring out a lot of the tagging and all the good stuff that goes with it. So some stuff might be a little more difficult to find or in spots that you're not used to. But as you get used to it and as we get used to it, it's going to get better and better. And the reason we've expanded onto a better site, of course, is because you guys have been great. Membership has been going up all the time, and we really appreciate it. For you guys who've already subscribed, thank you very much. And for you guys who haven't, come on, get on board, help us out here, guys. This is how we stay independent. This is how we stay not taking any tax dollars. We refuse to. We won't take them. We're qualified for them, but we don't want them, because we have to be accountable to you. So get on to westernstandard.news. As you can see, it's not that big, long, giant westernstandardonline.com anymore. It's westernstandard.news/membership. Take out a subscription. It's $10 a month, $99 for a year. And if you use the coupon code TRIGGERED, hey, you'll get another $10 off of that. It's a really good deal, cheaper than an old newspaper subscription used to be, and gives you full, unfettered access to all of our columns, our news stories, of course, as they break. And we've got reporters sitting up all across the country. It's hard to keep up with them these days. We're constant new people coming on board. So be sure to take out a subscription if you haven't already. And hey, share this, spread it around. This is how we can beat the mainstream media. This is how we can beat the tax-funded CBC, is by standing up and supporting our own news sources in order to, again, get clear, unfettered news in there. So yeah, speaking of that weather, and I guess it could be much worse. Manitoba has been getting the flooding. They always have. The area is known for it. I know we'll have our usual climate alarmists saying, oh, if we just, got rid of natural gas heating, it would stop flooding in Manitoba. It's flooded in the Red River Valley for the last, 10,000 years or so. We certainly don't want to exacerbate it, but, and I'm not trying to understate the pressure and suffering a lot of people are dealing with out in, Manitoba and Ontario right now. But for now, let's just deal with the more immediate pressing emergency they have to deal with and not worry so much about some of the more broader discussions on why these things happen. One thing I guess I'll talk about with cold weather, news story I saw is it's good for keeping some of the nasty, creepy, crawly things away. So this is a story that popped up, and of course I was just mortified. The Joro spider apparently has been spreading up towards us. You can see that big yellow, black, and red thing. Hitches rides on cars and trucks, and they expect it will make its way up into Canada soon. This is an invasive species, and I can imagine why. So this again reminds you as to why having access to firearms is still a good thing, because I don't know if a can of Raid would deal with one of those big, nasty, ugly things. So I just thought I'd pass that along, at least because it does say the one thing that they think might keep it from lasting in Canada is that they can't overwinter very well. So maybe these spring snowstorms, at least for what misery they cause us, will keep the Joro spiders from coming in and setting up shop up here, because I think I'll be just fine if we live without these things. Let's see. Speaking of bad reporting, let's talk about the Washington Post. This one was a beauty that jumped out at me this morning. Yes, they've got a study that has determined that finding healthy lifestyles may improve life expectancy. Really? You figured that out? And it was worth a headline at that. Living healthy makes you live longer. This is where the mainstream media is today, guys. I mean, if you really want the easy money, I don't know, you got to be one of those researchers to get a commission or however it works to do that sort of study. Wow, if you eat good foods and you exercise and you don't do unhealthy things, you can probably live longer. And where would we be without the Washington Post to remind us of all of that in case we'd forgotten at some point? So yeah, the headlines are just, they always keep my vein pulsing in the mornings when we get things going. So again, hey, I report on casual things and so on. We have all sorts of stuff. I talked about the observance of missing socks, but that's part of the fun for the show. But we're not going to spend money studying things such as why is water wet or why does the sun rise in the east, nor would we have to study why living a healthy lifestyle might make you live longer. Or who was it? Shannon asking the name of that spider. It's called the Joro spider, Joro. And I guess they've been coming up for quite some time. They're very large. There's not much to scale that thing on there with that, but they're big, hideous things. And I'm not big on spiders. One of the things I love Texas. I really do. I spent a lot of time working down there. I miss it. I'm hoping we get to the point where I'll start snowbirding and spending my winters down there, getting out of that with Jane. But one thing that always got me down there was those massive spiders, and they come in outbreaks. They have these things they call banana spiders, great, big, huge, hibbly things. They would just kill me when I'd be out there riding the quad, and then they'd be crawling up your arm and freak you out. I guess they weren't prone to biting, but they'd give you the heebie-jeebies for the entire day. Either way, let's hope that, again, whatever we're getting out of this wet snow and misery, we start preventing some of those wretched spiders from coming up this way. Let's see what else we got. That was interesting out of Dave for this story, so we got that on the website. And with Patrick Brown, so as I've commented before, and we streamed the entire leadership debate, by the way, that's all available on our Rumble channel in full. If you didn't get the chance to catch it, it was it was very heated. They were on each other's cases, a lot of shots fired back and forth. And there's some truth to it that does sour some people on politics when you see politicians behaving like that, when it's that vitriolic. But I don't know about Brown's strategy, though. Maybe, at least I've seen some indication of what it might be, is that he thinks that Canadians over the course of the race will become so soured over the whole leadership race in general that they'll go to him by default, because aside from that, he's been invisible. He won't talk to media. He sends out releases, things like this, but we haven't seen much of him anywhere. He doesn't attend debates. Whether you like them or not, people tend to look at those as an example then of where their leaders might take them. And Brown could have come in and been like Aitchison. Scott Aitchison as MP was actually very calm and controlled and was a voice of reason in that debate. So was Baber. So I don't know if standing outside and throwing rocks back at the participants of the debate is a good strategy on the part of Brown, but at least I've seen some indications of what this strategy is, because again, it's been kind of bizarre. You're running for something where you need popular votes and you're not getting out there. I hate to say it, Mr. Brown, but aside from political wieners like me, most of the people in the West have absolutely no idea who you are, and you need votes all across. With that weighted system with the Conservative Party of Canada leadership race, you need to win ridings all across the country in order to pull it off. So I don't know about this tactic of trying to keep a low profile is going to pay off in the long run, but we'll see. Some people have also, when I was criticizing him before, they said he's quite an organizational powerhouse. So I guess time will tell. It is going to be a terribly long race. And I know some people are going to be sick of it by September 10th when the vote finally does come along. So I see the guest in the lobby. Before I get to him, though, I'm going to speak to our sponsor quickly, and that is Bitcoin Well. I've talked about these guys before. Digital currencies, and we're talking about inflation. We're talking about cost of living. We talk about the government seizing bank accounts on people, all sorts of reasons and things that people might want to start examining digital currencies, and there's lots of them out there. Bitcoin is, though, the big one. It's kind of the first one and the dominant one. But if you're not familiar with it, how do you get involved in it? How do you safely get involved with it? That's the big thing. Well, Bitcoin Well is an Alberta company. They're a Canadian company. They're publicly traded. They offer personalized one-on-one service to help get you involved in the world of digital currencies in a way that that you could trust somebody, right? It's not a distant call center. You're not dealing through emails. They actually have face-to-face personalized one-on-one service, just like any other kind of investment. If you're going to sit down with somebody at the bank on your retirement funds, things like that, they'll sit face to face with you and talk about it. Well, same with Bitcoin Well. That's what these guys are all about. And if you can't get face to face, you will get. We've done that here because we have plans here. I'll talk about that a little later. But Zoom meetings and so on, they facilitate it. They make sure you can get involved safely and take control of your money. So check them out, guys. BitcoinWell.com, a good Alberta company. Okay, so let's get to our guest here, and that's Brian Winter. He's from Cochrane. And I'd seen a recent release he'd put out there. And he's a retired paramedic, and he's been working on addressing the issue. Hi there, Brian. Can you hear me all right there?
Yes, good morning, Cory.
Good morning. Glad you could join us today. I've been looking forward to this. It's as I kind of said at the introduction of the show, it's hitting the headlines today in Calgary. Ambulances hit another crisis level. Firefighters are waiting for hours for ambulance service. Things are getting really, really dangerous out there with this shortage of EMS coverage right now. And you've been working, I guess, to address that in Cochrane.
Yes, Cory. I'm a retired paramedic, at times over 30 years. And last August, there was a public meeting held at the Cochrane Legion, organized by another retired paramedic, just to let the citizens of Cochrane know that there's issues with the current ambulance system run by the province. We had about 80 people in attendance. And from that 80 people, we had formed a Cochrane EMS Citizen Action Group. And we have 14 members where we meet, Cory, twice a month. We have an agenda. We develop terms of reference. And what we're trying to do, Cory, is just let the citizens know that there are issues. And we had an open house, or we had a booth at the annual Chamber of Commerce trade show this weekend. We had 268 people sign a petition. Currently, before the trade show, we had about 2,300 names that members of our group have gone door to door. And now we've got roughly about 2,360 signatures. We're meeting with our MLA, Peter Guthrie, next Tuesday evening to present the petition to him, and he's agreed to take it to the health minister. And basically, we as a action group, Cory, figured that there are three simple ways that we can actually fix the system. Number one is that our emergency crews are doing non-emergency transfers into Calgary, which is taking our current unit into the Calgary system. And once they get in there, Cory, they're waiting in the hospital for 4, 5, 6 hours. Another crew is doing another transfer, and then we're left with no units protecting Cochrane. So when someone calls for a medical emergency, the units could be coming from anywhere in southern Alberta. They could be coming from Banff. They could be coming from Canmore. They could be coming from Didsbury. And to us, it's just not acceptable. So number one, what we've said is that let's farm out the non-emergency transfers to another alternate source, whether that's private or whether the AHS step up and put more transfer units there. We don't really care. We just want to keep our emergency ambulances in Cochrane. Number two is hospital wait times. This is just an issue. You can go into any particular hospital and see 5, 6, 8, 10 ambulances lined up, and they've got their patients in the hallway where these paramedics are basically looking after a patient until there's a vet available. Number three, Cory, is flexing. Our crew starts at a shift in Calgary, and they're flex anywhere in southern Alberta. They're going to Olds, they're going to Didsbury, which is, again, keeping our emergency crews away from Cochrane. So we have come up with three simple plans, and that's what our petition is about. These could be fixed very easily. So if they took our particular 3 points and applied them, it would keep our units in Cochrane.
Yeah, and what I appreciate and what you're up to is again, you're not coming from an ideology. The bottom line is you just want to get more ambulances available to people when they need them. That's the thing. As you said, whether it's public, whether it's private, it doesn't really matter. The bottom line is there's underservice right now, and it has to change. And you've pointed out three ways that can be improved. I'd like to get back to the broader policy issues in a few minutes, but something else impressed me. You're working on a proactive thing in that you're accepting, though, that there's going to be slow service and response times for a while. So working on preparing people at least to be able to just people themselves, to empower themselves to respond to emergencies and perhaps stabilize people and save their lives until an EMS officer can get there. Can you expand a bit on that?
Yeah, basically at our booth we had on the weekend, we said, if you know the unit's going to be delayed for whatever length of time, do you have a plan B? And we had information there on first aid courses. We had information there on CPR courses. And we also distributed the amount of AEDs that are in Cochrane. Currently, we have 20 AEDs located through Cochrane. And just to give you an example, Cory, last September, a 70-year-old golfer collapsed at the 9th hole in Cochrane. He went down. There happened to be residents that back onto the golf course. They went out and performed CPR. The AED was retrieved from the lobby of the golf club, and he was revived before EMS arrived because they were delayed. And currently, right now, we're holding two charity golf tournaments, one in Calgary next month, and one in Cochrane next September. And all the proceeds are going toward more AEDs in Cochrane. Since we started our campaign, a local service group, Cory, has agreed to donate $20,000 to purchase more AEDs in Cochrane. So if we get $10,000 or $15,000 from these charity golf tournaments, put it with the 20, we'll have $35,000 that we can purchase and increase the number of AEDs in Cochrane. And we want them registered. So if a particular person is calling and saying that an individual has collapsed, there's no pulse and no heartbeat, the dispatcher will say, hey, do you know you have an AED within a block or 2 blocks or whatever the situation is? And in this particular case, the gentleman, a 70-year-old gentleman, is out currently golfing, but he was clinically dead before an AED was used last September.
Yeah, and just to expand a bit for people who aren't familiar, so an AED is a kind of a portable layperson's defibrillator unit, and I got taught on those in occupational first aid in the past. They're quite user friendly and safe, but not everybody necessarily knows what those are, and we're seeing more and more of them. But the more we can see out there, the better, of course, because you never know where or when you're going to need one.
Oh, exactly, and they're basically foolproof. You turn the thing on; it actually talks you through how to use it. And if the person has a pulse, it will basically say stop and evaluate the patient. So it requires a bit of instructions, but anybody can use them. And there's the maintenance that's required with respect to the pads and the batteries. But basically they're sort of a foolproof thing. The AEDs is what really saves the patient. CPR will keep the blood flowing, but AEDs is what happens when you shock the heart to get the heart back into some type of rhythm.
Yeah, so there were other things you'd mentioned as I kind of talked about. There's first aid courses people could take down in the urban areas, but we're seeing it everywhere too. Keeping naloxone handy, epinephrine, even. I mean, there's items that need immediate intervention with people that lay people could actually apply if they just had a little of the knowledge and resources in order to do it, just assuming that you're going to have a longer time for an EMS arrival.
Well, that's correct. It's sort of a Band-Aid effect until we can resolve the EMS crisis in Cochrane and Alberta. But we're encouraging the residents of Cochrane and area to make sure that they have a current CPR, a current first aid course. They know what an AED is. And in fact, 2 members of our 14-member committee have already purchased personal AEDs. They run roughly about $1,400-1,500, depending on where you buy them from. So they have taken upon themselves to purchase AEDs for their own personal family.
Yeah. So, moving away from that, and like I said, I just like that at least, it's being pragmatic. I mean, there's a bigger issue to be addressed, and it's not saying we can kick the can down the road for EMS response times. It's just saying, hey, as citizens, there's lots of things you can do to protect yourself in the meantime. Even if we fix the EMS response time issue somehow, it'd be good to have that many more resources and people trained on them if they should ever need them. So getting back to that, though, I mean, it's particularly acute with rural services, though. I mean, Cochrane could barely be called rural these days. It seems to be actually mostly anything that's nearby a large center like Calgary. I live in Pritis. Our ambulance gets pulled into the city all the time. This has been new. I mean, since what was it during Ed Stelmach's time, I believe, when they sort of centralized all the EMS services, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically, we ran in Cochrane. The ambulance service started on July 1st, 1983. I actually was a paramedic in Calgary, came out to Cochrane in the early 80s, took the title of fire chief because I was with the fire department. And then in July 1st, 83, we started our own service. And then the province, for whatever means, decided to take over the service in 2009. And ever since then, it's gone downhill. In 2009, before we took the ambulance service over, we had 2 first-line response units. In 2022, with the population of Cochrane close to 35,000 people, triple, we still have 2,000. We still have 2 units. So it really hasn't kept up with the population growth and the amount of calls that we've got. And so if the government would do our 3 simple steps, it's a start on trying to keep our units in Cochrane. And rather having a unit coming. There's been situations where a car has started from Vulcan coming to Cochrane for whatever instant. Luckily, there were cars that cleared from the closest hospital. But can you imagine having a car coming from Vulcan if you've got a heart attack or a stroke or whatever? It's not acceptable, Cory.
No, and then it's not just the long runs, but it's something you referenced earlier too, whether it was in patient transfer or other things. But when they get to those larger hospitals, they can often be locked in and doing hallway care. I wrote a column on this last summer, and I drove by and checked out the Rocky View just randomly and pulled in and went out back. And sure enough, there were, I counted 9 ambulances all parked behind there. And presumably all of the attendants were stuck inside at the hospital that should be out and about somewhere. I mean, ready or possibly in the middle of providing services. But then it gets into a kind of a larger more complicated issue because then it comes down to the healthcare itself and hospital staff signing off on taking patients, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we've been told that it's if you go ahead and drop off a patient at a hospital, it's called abandonment. But we're not abandoning them in a jungle somewhere. We're taking them to a first-class hospital in a particular urban setting. And the problem is that they're downloading the availability for us to look after, or the paramedics to look after the patients we brought in because they're short-staffed. When we ran the service in Cochrane, if you spent more than 15 minutes at the hospital, you were too long. If you're a paramedic attending, you would give your report to the triage nurse. She would tell you what bed you would need. Your partner would get the ambulance ready, and within 15 minutes, we're gone. But now in 2009, Cory, the paramedics are part of the AHS staff. So I don't know, they think they can download the availability of the patients to the paramedics, which is absolutely wrong. In fact, I think it's criminal. That they're holding hostage the paramedics at a hospital where they should be out in their area. And for us, it should be back in Cochrane.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a waste of specially trained skill sets. I mean, there's specially trained people in hospital for caring for patients once they've come in. An EMS attendant, a paramedic, I mean, they've got the training and the ability to be out and about. That's the point. That's the purpose. They should be in the field and either, taking part in a transfer or stabilizing something out there. and we're just completely misappropriating a resource when we're using them as care personnel in hospital hallways.
Well, that's right. And they're using the paramedic staff as, you want to say, in quotations, babysitting. Now, if you walk into the hospital, there's a clock there saying your particular time to get looked at could be 2 or 3 or 4 hours. But the only difference is that we're bringing somebody in by ambulance. If it's critical, they probably will get a bed. If it's not critical, they'll say, go in the hallway and wait until your turn comes up. Well, why can't we put that particular patient in the waiting room as if he walked in? But no, the system won't allow us to do that, Cory.
Yeah, so there's trouble on a lot of fronts. I've been screaming this one from the rooftops for a while. As we know, we both know Don Sharp, and he's a great guy, and he's brought my attention to it. I went to meetings down in Okotoks that he was helping host, and it just seems once in a while we'll have a tragedy, and this will hit the news, and everybody gets upset, and then they all forget about it. But this problem just isn't going away. But at least you're making a twofold approach. One with, at least, well, let's see how we as citizens can get up and help each other and help mitigate the damage. But at the same time, we've got to change this system altogether because it's just not working.
It's got to start at the top. And looking in Airdrie, was it last month, they transported 2 patients by fire truck to their urgent care in Airdrie because there was no ambulances available. And the city of Calgary, as mentioned in the Herald last week, I think a crew stayed with the patient for 3 hours waiting for an ambulance. Well, that takes that particular fire crew out of service. It's not fair. It's not fair at all.
No, and again, it's a different train. I mean, the fire crews are trained to respond to medical emergencies, but they're also trained to put out fires. I mean, if there'd have been a large fire emergency, that they could be delayed. It goes all the way down the line.
It does. It's a system failure. But we got to start somewhere. So our 14 volunteer committee is very committed. Like I say, we had part of our crew went out and collected almost 2,500 signatures based on our 3-point plan. That's going to be meeting with our MLA next Tuesday, and he has promised to take that to the minister. And those 2,500 signatures, that could be 5 or 10 or 8 or 12% of the voting public for that particular MLA. That's got to make a difference, Cory.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you coming on to talk to us, and I appreciate the work you're doing. I mean, all we can do is keep trying and keep hammering on it and reminding them, and hopefully eventually we'll get a positive change. Where can people find more information on what you're doing out in Cochrane and, perhaps helping out or taking part?
Yeah, if we have a Facebook page, if they go to Cochrane EMS Citizen Action Group, you'll pick up our Facebook page. We're trying to keep the residents of Cochrane updated of success stories plus failures, and to let them know what's happening in the community of Cochrane. There are other community groups around. There's Airdrie, there's Okotoks, there's Banff, there's Canmore, and they can go to those particular websites as well, or Facebook pages, to see what's happening in their community.
Great. Well, I hope we can get more people on board, and that Mr. Guthrie gets some people's attention in government, and we can lead to a resolution. But in the meantime, we'll just have to keep the pressure up. I thank you again for coming on today, Brian, and I hope we can talk again sometime down the road.
Okay, no problem. Thanks a lot, Cory. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
You bet.
So that's retired paramedic Brian Winter, and he is based out in Cochrane. And it's really so acute, and it seems like such a straightforward, common sense issue. Yet, why is it, with government, it just seems the things that have the most simple solutions are somehow the most complicated to get done. And, that they've got it down. It's really good. I mean, into it being in the sense of a 3-step solution. They're not just pointing at a problem. That's something I'm prone to. I lay out problems on here all the time. Is, of course, you do have to address a problem before you can solve it. But as far as that goes, you should go further and present a solution. And that's what Mr. Winter and the other volunteers with them are doing, and donors, pointing out how to fix the system, as well as just some mitigating efforts to at least help people, when you face the fact that the system is going to be somewhat slow. And it's not for lack of money, guys. The money that's gone into healthcare this last few years, I mean, increases have been massive. It's just not being spent right. It's not being spent efficiently. And as I was saying that there's ambulances backed up, piled up in emergency rooms all across the city, and they're draining other areas. I can't remember the name of the union, but if you look on Twitter, there's the Emergency Services Union, and they're out there and they post all the time pictures because it shows an ambulance on a map, and it shows times when you see ambulances coming out of Banff to service, Strathmore, where people, as Brian had said, somebody was coming out of Vulcan to service Cochrane. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous long distances these ambulances are going, and they're leaving people underserviced and at risk. We should be solving this, and we should be on it, but it's again lost in the realm of ideological debate and the frustration. We've got the wrong. These are specialized, professional, skilled people, and you need them out doing what they're trained to do, and they can't do that when they're spending an hour and a half driving on a highway to respond to an event, or if they're spending 2, 3, 4, 5 hours sitting in a hospital hallway. It's ridiculous, and it's a misappropriation of resources. As Brian said, it's almost criminal. This is putting people at risk over something with obviously an administrative battle going on. If we need more triage staff or treatment staff in hospital emergency areas, well, then let's work on that. But to do it as a Band-Aid to stick paramedics, locked up and caught waiting to drop patients off like this is not sustainable. And this has been going on for years, and it's getting worse. And that's part of what ticks me off. We watch our stats when I write columns, when I do things. I understand not all of my columns are brilliant and get massively widely read, but the ones I've written on this issue don't gain a lot of legs. They don't gain a lot of steam. Like, folks, pay attention. I know it's one of those things you don't like to think of until, it kind of bites you in the butt, but this can bite you in the butt in the worst possible way. I mean, one of the first rules with healthcare, especially in emergency healthcare, is time. The faster you can get professional treatment, the better your chances in a serious emergency of coming out of it without being seriously harmed or having long-term consequences, or of course, even worse, dying. Speed is the essence. It's everything. And that's why ambulances have the red flashing lights. That's why these guys are trained to get in there on the ground and move quickly, get people into the care that they can provide in an ambulance, and then get them to that hospital and into treatment where they've got the rest of the facilities there. It's integral. Likewise with fire. We're tying up firefighters on medical things, and this is exhausting them too. These resources, we just are not spending our money well, and on things that are very important. We're not talking about public art, guys, and some of the other stuff we piss money away on. This is the thing that, number one, as running in elections and in managing campaigns, the top two issues with people in polls are almost always the same, particularly provincially: healthcare and then education. Healthcare is on the top all the time. Well, healthcare is being horrifically managed, and it's putting us all at risk at great expense at that. And we've got to reevaluate. So I'm glad, I really appreciate that Brian and Don and others are at least trying to bring this issue to a head, hopefully before we see more tragic events happening and things such as that, and again, doing some proactive stuff. I guess just get back onto some other comments there. I noticed Damien was commenting, one of the commenters, having difficulties accessing the website. As I said, we've migrated to a new one. It's a little different. You don't need a whole new account. You might need to change a password. You send an email to info or support if you need to, but nobody should have to set up a whole brand new account. I know things have changed. Some of your cookies in your computer might not make it as quick and easy to log in if you've got an account, but we're not making people real sign up, from scratch all over again or anything like that. It's just some growing pains, I guess you could say, and I appreciate everybody's patience with us as we iron it out. It's only been a few days since we moved over to it, and it's going to make for a much better website for everybody all around, though, in the long run. Oh, there we go. Damien's saying he's fixed it. Okay, perfect. See, so I know I get, as like Dave was saying on the computer too, sometimes all we can do is turn things off and on again. And that's the extent of our tech abilities, but it should all be working for folks. And again, I appreciate the patience on those lines. So let's see what else we've got going in the news. Let's look at this. $54 million in student loans forgiven. So more than 50 million in unpaid student loans are going to be forgiven at taxpayers' expense this year, says the Department of Employment. Cabinet had suspended debt collections as a COVID relief measure in 2020. And now they're just saying, okay, we'll let it go. What this entitlement, or wonder why our money seems to be just going into a bottomless pit. I mean, I think the student loan program is fantastic. I mean, it's tough. If somebody's coming up, they've graduated, they want to go into post-secondary, they got plans, but education's expensive. Here's something, they don't have a big credit rating. It's not like they can throw it on the gold card and get in there. Here's a system that they can qualify for, and it's low interest and generous payment terms and spread out. But you got to get them to pay it back. It's a loan. It's not a grant. It's not a handout. We get enough of those through the rest of our lives and everything. But the more the government starts writing these off, the more other students, of course, are going to be demanding the same. We can't give this pipe dream of socialists of free education to everybody in the post-secondary. I mean, I know they're always talking about that. We can't. It costs too much as it is. And then we're going to get people signing up for some of the most horrific. I mean, I'm sorry, we only need so many sociology degrees out there. We got a little bit of a supply and demand take care of some of this, guys. The STEM trades, high employment areas, those aren't the ones complaining about being able to pay off their student loans. You're not seeing engineers having difficulties with this, or people who manage to use some student funding and loans for even trade training and plumbers, electricians, things like that. They're out working, they pay off their loans. No, it's the person who thought that they could take interpretive dance and specialize in that and get a doctorate in it and find out that they're 6 figures in debt after putting a decade into it. And lo and behold, aside from doing the odd presentation in a coffee shop in Hipsterville, nobody really cares about your degree and you can't pay your bills with it. That's not my problem. And maybe if we stop forgiving these loans, they'll get a little more careful about what they're doing. I mean, there's still a whole lot out there. There's 4.7 billion in loans out there. So 53 million sounds small, but that's $53 million, guys. That's a lot of money. We shouldn't be throwing it away or writing it off anywhere. Lord knows, if you as a small person, now I know if you're a connected liberal funder or something and you owe CRA money, you might be able to get out of it. But for your average person, if you owe CRA money, you're up the creek. And you have to pay it, and they were relentless. They will chase you down to the end of time. They will squeeze every nickel out of you. And I don't think that student loan collections should be as relentless as CRA. Those guys are horrible. But it should be the same principle. You owe the money, pay it back. That's the way it works. Data shows that 9% of students default on debts. And that's the lowest default rate since the Parliament brought it in. So that's not bad. But then they've gone up, and down. And it's not good enough, guys. We got to follow up on these. Just writing it off isn't the way to go. Keep on it. It's our money. And it's unfair to the students who worked their butts off, graduated, got to work, and paid off their bill. What are you telling them? Yeah, sorry for you being responsible and paying your bills, but we're going to give that deadbeat right off their debt. Speaking of more government irresponsibility and subsidies, so here's the other one. Dave mentioned that when we had the news check-in. So $390 million in subsidies to periodicals. So these are like weekly news magazines, papers, things such as that. Things that we refuse to take any tax funding for, by the way. None of those subsidies are coming to the Western Standard. But $390 million recently have gone into all of those in the last few years. And the number of periodicals in Canada, what happened? It fell 9%. So almost 10% of them are gone, even though we're pouring all of this tax-funded money into these. And then, of course, there's another $595 million that went to newspapers. And again, not us. And it didn't create the jobs as promised, because it doesn't. It won't work. Subsidies don't work. Get out of the way. That's what you have to do. Not subsidize, not steal money from taxpayers and give it to publications that can't stand on their 2 feet. Look, the old publications are having a really hard time. And it's because the world is changing. It's changing dramatically. They can't pull in the advertising revenue like they used to. It's not there. You don't make a bunch of money off of classified ads and obituaries like you used to be able to. Unfortunately, a lot of those places are still carrying a lot of the overhead too. Of course, they got giant buildings. They've got, printing presses. Have you ever seen how thin the Calgary Sun is these days? It's practically a brochure. You used to go out on a Sunday and you'd get this great big thick thing. I'd spend a whole afternoon reading that. And now it's just a flyer. And it's just the way it goes, though. We can't maintain this by just continuing to subsidize them. They've got to pivot. They've got to change their model. They've got to do it a different way, or they've got to go. That's the way it works. And I know it leads to some lost jobs. There's some great veteran journalists who are getting laid off, and they're having a difficult time finding new employment. But again, you've got to find other ways to do it. Subsidizing doesn't work. If the goal is to keep people working, if the goal is to keep these places in business, well, we're seeing the numbers coming in now. It failed. It failed. There's fewer publications, and none of it created any more jobs. So cut it out. It's not working. Move over and talk about one of our sponsors as we get towards my next guest who should be here soon. And that is the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. These guys, I was talking actually to Tony Bernardo from them last Friday, and they are a great outfit and a great sponsor. If you own firearms, if you're thinking of owning firearms, you've got to be a member of these guys. It's a resource. Like any other hobby or pastime, anything you take very seriously, you're going to get involved with groups to promote it, to give you resources, to network, to do things such as that. And firearms, of course, are no exception by any means. The Canadian Shooting Sports Association has all kinds of resources, videos on safe firearm use, different things you can do, whether it's hunting, target shooting, collecting, whatever. It's all up to you. Ladies on the range, yeah, things like that. Links to trade shows and events, things like that. They have it all there, guys. And of course, most importantly of all, they are standing up for your right and ability to keep using those firearms. They have been lobbying and initiating challenges against the Liberal government that is constantly trying to take away your right and ability to own these firearms. And hey, if you don't stand up for yourself, they're going to win. It's frog in water. Slowly but surely, they keep recategorizing things. They keep changing them. They keep taking them away. You don't stand up for yourself, you're going to lose. So these guys are the way to stand up for yourself. It's not that expensive. Get on there, check it out. Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Take out a membership with them. That's how they can keep helping you. There's a lot of resources, plus they'll stand up for your rights. Canadian Shooting Sports Association, CSSA-CILA, a great sponsor and well worth looking into. Okay, let's see what else we've got in the news. Scroll to rant and report and rave about. Oh, I got some more of those numbers for the money going to some of those periodicals. So, let's see some of these things. $6.4 million went to Reader's Digest. And I can see why Reader's Digest is failing, because as long as people have phones to read on the toilet, they don't need Reader's Digest anymore. Look, come on, that's really what 90% of Reader's Digest always was. I mean, it was perfectly encapsulated stories, just long enough for an extended visit to the bathroom, but not something you'd have to commit a whole afternoon to. Now that you can read the news on your smartphone or whatnot, you just don't need it anymore. So $6.5 million has gone to them. It doesn't seem to be helping any. I don't even know when I've seen one anymore. Can you get them? I mean, they're still there. I guess they're taking money. $4.9 million to Canadian Living. Yeah, the big ones. $4.1 million to Maclean's, of course. And some of the writing coming out of Maclean's is quite stomach-wrenching. Again, there's a reason readers are turning away from this stuff. And it's not always actually just from the changing advertising market and things like that. Sometimes it's just awful content. Life magazine, $476,000. That's Toronto Life. Sorry, $1.8 million to Toronto Life. And here's a neat one, the National Observer, which is a Vancouver environmental advocacy website. But somehow I guess they're considered a periodical and weekly, and they got $476,000 of your dollars. Isn't that nice? Toronto IT website, The Logic, got $367,000. United Church Observer, again, very, very progressive. You notice some of the trend on too, these smaller outfits that are getting your tax dollars. They're all lefties. $338,000 to them. And then, of course, the Narwhal, which is total trash, exceedingly biased junk. I believe they were part of that scandalous mess with CBC-funded reporters who were actually acting as environmental activists at CGL, one of the blockades. Well, they got $254,000 as well from you to keep putting out the garbage they've got. So yeah, your tax dollars at work, guys. It's hard not to get a little depressed at times. So yeah, that's something that my last guest had mentioned earlier. I'm just looking at the news stories. So Alberta's shortage of ambulance paramedics reached new levels of desperation. That's from the news story. This is the text I'm reading here. Resulting in firefighters waiting up to 2 hours for EMS to arrive, according to the union representing paramedics and the Firefighters Association. They're calling the problem a deep code red. And the word deep red means there's nothing left. The crews are on their knees. These are the words being used. the lack of ambulances is plagued and overworked and understaffed emergency response system across Alberta, but it's gotten this bad now. I mean, something we didn't cover as well, and it's a huge thing that's drawing on these guys, and that's a bigger issue, but it's the opioid epidemic. I mean, this system was never meant to deal with this many overdoses, or they keep calling it drug intoxication or poisoning these days, whatever you want to call it. Somebody took the wrong stuff, fentanyl, heroin, meth, all of these things, but it's leading to massive pressure. When you're downtown Calgary, you see those ambulances going, you see those fire trucks going, more often than not, they're going to an overdose. In Alberta, I think we're over 5 fatal overdoses a day. And a lot of them are in people's households. I had a guest on talking about addiction. I think 60% of the fatal overdoses, they aren't out on the streets, the ones we see and everything. They're in people's homes. But either way, they still eventually will need an EMS response. And of course, that doesn't count for, so 5 a day are dying. I don't know how many a day are surviving with EMS responding to these things, but that's another big problem on what's going on out there and what's pressuring our EMS system. Let's see here. It's in other news, Alberta's joining the legal challenge. Is the first province to intervene in the federal court challenge of Cabinet's use of the Emergencies Act. So only 3 provinces supported the Cabinet's declaration of it. There were only 3 provinces thought it was a good idea. Don't forget, Doug Ford was one of them. Don't let Doug off the hook. It's election time for him right now. And he behaved abhorrently during the pandemic. He was terrible. So only 3 provinces did support it. Alberta wasn't one of them, nor was Saskatchewan, nor a number of others. And so Kenny was saying it's our duty to do everything we can to protect Albertans' freedoms and liberties from this kind of breach. No government should have the power to seize a person's property and withhold their assets without due process in the law. So the province said Friday, I guess it was, they're granted intervener status, the challenge filed by the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. By the way, just to give a heads up too, I'll be talking to John Carpay with the Canadian Constitution Foundation this week. We'll get some updates because they got a bunch of challenges. The courts are going to be piled up a whole lot in hindsight, looking at the government stepping on everybody's individual rights like that with the actions of the Emergencies Act last February. But Alberta has gotten on board with it again. As the only province that's gotten the intervener status, at least, and it helps. Everything helps. Keep pushing. We've got a lot of challenges going with Kenny on a number of levels right now. But at least it doesn't mean everything he does is wrong. And the Civil Liberties Associations, those guys are kind of inconsistent in some of their things they believe are individual rights, which aren't. But at least in this case, they are pushing back because it was a gross violation of individual liberties. So Alberta's on board. And Trudeau in the Commons, of course, when it comes to these things, has just gotten as partisan as ever. And he says he was shooting at the Conservatives, actually, and says they're worried that it's going to show the level to which their support for the blockaders contributed to the difficulties of so many Canadians. Oh, kiss my butt. Yeah. Virtue signaling, clown shoe wearing idiot. But I mean, he just turns it into a partisan spin with everything he does. We got a very serious issue and more investigation and court challenges coming. And, just hopefully something goes through. And again, I don't know what it takes. I really don't. David Creighton wrote earlier today, referring to it, calling him Teflon Trudeau. I mean, the amount of things that guy has done, and hopefully something comes out of this Conservative leadership race and a party or something to manage to unseat that clown. I don't know what it takes, but he's still pretty solid as things sit. Shirley saying, I fear the Kenny's just virtue signaling. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it's easy to throw court challenges out whether you think they're going to win or lose to make it look like you're going to do something. Just like the ones against the carbon tax. You had to try, but you knew there probably wasn't much chance and it didn't work. And now we'll see what happens. Connie Morris saying Northern BC has the same problem with ambulances, small communities up there. They have two attendants for the ambulances, and if one is off, then no driver. The volunteer fire department is out there, and then they got RCMP dealing with it. This is healthcare. The way it used to be in Alberta, and that's one of the things that the guest was referencing, local areas got their own attendants. Sometimes it was private, sometimes it was public. I mean, the municipality would deal with that. And there were a lot of private providers. And I know that the healthcare purists go bananas with it, but you know what? Private's usually better. And you're going to pay for it either way. And I was at a town hall meeting down. There's some of the problems that we got going on with this whole thing too. And the town hall was being held down in Okotoks one I attended on this issue. And as soon as they even talked about private ambulances, there was a woman there who went haywire and started laying out all the union points, almost as if she had them all rehearsed and ready to go before she showed up. Because she did. Because there's another big problem too, and it's not just government policy, it's unions. And they make things, it's funny because it's the EMS union that's pushing back and that's frustrated with this, but there's nurses unions that really like being able to use EMS to take pressure off of their work in the emergency room floors. So they don't want to see necessarily a change to that status quo. We've got to look at all of these aspects. So blindly fighting against privatization of anything is stupid. It's closing a door without a point. And it's as the guest said, it doesn't matter if it's private or public, just got to get the job done. And municipalities were working perfectly fine before Ed Stelmach came in and changed it all. And they had a lot of private services that were doing just fine. And now you're spending the money, you still spend the money municipally, you still pay all those taxes, but you're not getting any services because they've centralized everything, and the bigger cities just drain all of your ambulance resources into the city centers and into the big hospitals, and then they sit in the waiting rooms, and then you're underserved in the outlying communities. Plus, as it was showing, Calgary itself is running out of them too. It's just everywhere. So let's get realistic and start looking where the real problems lie. And it's a multifaceted one. We sure can't let the unions off the hook on it. So this was out of Kinney. From his speech, there was the big gathering. We got a whole bunch of video, by the way, on our channels with Rumble, and I really strongly recommend Rumble. We won't get canceled on there. But, we also have YouTube and Facebook and Twitch and a whole bunch of other areas. And Matthew Horwood, our Ottawa guy, was covering a lot of the big conference, the Conservative conference over the weekend out in Ottawa. Nico was out there, and they did a whole bunch of great interviews of all sorts of conservative leaders and individuals, and they're all posted up there. So, if you're looking for some viewing stuff, get on there, guys. We got some great content out there of a lot of stuff in that conference because not everybody could get out there themselves, but at least you could hear from some of those attendees and people who were out there. Plus, as I said, the whole leadership debate is up on the site there. So Kenny on that during his speech, because of course he had to address it. The deadline's coming up. I think it's in 2 more days, I believe, that everything has to be received by Deloitte and Touche for the mail-in ballots for the leadership review for the UCP. And the results are going to be released on the 18th. We're going to do something to cover it, but I don't know how. I'm trying to set it up. We're going to be watching and covering that live, but I keep inquiring at the UCP and they keep saying we'll have the results when we have the results. So I don't know if it'll be noon that day or at 11:30 that night. The usual clarity. They wonder why they struggle in the polls. Can you not just do that? Can you not just set a time for us and say, this is when it's coming out? You're going to have a week of counting. Why can't you say 4 o'clock, Red Deer, this is where we're doing it? But they won't, because this is a government that just seems incapable of transparency until they're forced, until they're cornered into something before they deal with anything. And then they don't know why they're losing grassroots support. They don't know why people are sick of them, why people don't trust them. So Kenny gave a speech to the Conservatives, and he said, if he loses the race, he will, in all humility, step aside and let there be a leadership election. He said he will do that. He said also, though, if they choose a path of unity, meaning he wins, he believes all of their members will expect every member of their caucus and team to also respect the decision of the members democratically. And he expects a clear run, going to the 2023 election. Okay, but that's not going to happen. I know he's reaching out. I know he's understanding. It's as I've said before, if he wins, I don't know, if he wins with 80%, nobody's get trusted anyways. But maybe that's about a number, or even 70% where you can say, look, there's a majority of the party supports you. So let's just put everything together, get on with it, win the next election, and we can get back to fighting inside the party afterwards. But people won't trust it with the amount of things now. There's challenges. There's things that have gone to elections Alberta over it now. They're investigating. It sounds so much like the leadership race that never did get resolved and settled from years ago. This is just not a government that anybody trusts. And if he comes in with 55% or 60% support and says, that's it, I've got my mandate. No, you don't. That mandate sucks. I don't care about 50% plus one. This is an internal party measure of your performance. Leadership reviews are usually more in the 80, 90% range, not 50% plus one. If you can only win 50% plus one of your own party, you are not going to win a large segment of Albertan voters. You got to be able to do better than that with your own members. And this transparency, guys, I don't know if you're ever going to learn it. It's probably too late. Not holding my breath. But, well, we can hope for the best. Let's see. We've got some other news popping up. More human remains found in Nevada's Lake Mead. For people, if you're not familiar with it, that's the one with the big Hoover Dam kind of formed. It's the big lake over from Las Vegas. You fly over it on your way and you see it down there. It's been getting lower and lower. There's been drought and the reservoir is getting low. And lo and behold, over and over, they keep finding barrels and bodies on the edges of it. Just kind of, it's morbid, but it's kind of not surprising. As people have always known, there's always been that talk. I guess these are guys who didn't feel like digging in the desert, so they dumped the bodies and barrels in the lake. But Vegas always has been a mafia city, and there are innumerable bodies buried all over the place. It turns out a lot of them were in Lake Mead. So, and they're saying they anticipate much more as the water keeps dropping. Just strange news out of the world of weirdness that's out there. Let's see. Well, it looks like my guest isn't going to make it. So, I guess, I was hoping to talk to Mr. Bourgault about why he got disqualified from the CPC. He said he'd put everything in and he'd put the $300,000 in and all that. But maybe as with this show, he didn't understand the deadline and didn't make it on time. You set an appointment, you make it. And there are deadlines and things like that. Either way, I'd offer the chance for him to explain it on the show. I'm afraid he's just going to have to pass on it. So for the time being, we have, 5 other candidates to choose from, as Nico's got listed on the bottom. Patrick Brown, actually 6, sorry. Those are the ones from the debate there. And Patrick Brown, I don't know if he's ever going to attend debates or not, but if he does, he'll be one of the 6 that are on there who made it into the. And there was a lot of others who entered and didn't make the cut. Gary saying, how much water did you drink while in Vegas? Well, the last times I was in Vegas, no, actually I have been there since I quit drinking. Either way, though, most of the times I was in Vegas, the water was on the least of my consumptions typically. But yeah, with thinking of it coming from Lake Mead, welcome to the world of recycling. Claudette saying, he was on Shadow Davis last night. It's not what you said. Well, Claudette, he had the opportunity to come on here. He didn't. So I can't interpret further. So yes, I don't smile on people who stand me up for guest appointments. I don't like it. I send many emails out. I send the time of day. I send the links. I send them to multiple people. I don't know what the reason is. It might be an honest mistake, whatever it happened. But I only have so many spaces for them. I do think he's a decent person. I do think he was probably unfairly barred from running for it. But he had an opportunity now to expand on it, and he's passed on it, apparently. So it's unfortunate. Either way, we'll see what comes. He might work further in political things down the future. All right, so tomorrow I have John Carpe from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms on. He's going to give an update, and of course, those guys are busy. Lots of court challenges, lots of things. They've been standing up for Tamara Leach and her legal challenges, and they got challenges out on the Emergencies Act and things such as that. And then Christopher Oldcorn, our Saskatchewan reporter, and he also writes the odd opinion columns on bigger things, outside of that. And he wrote one that was really good if you look it up on the website. Actually, it's called Go Woke, Go Broke. And he listed out some of the things, Netflix is losing money, while Spotify is actually growing in subscribers and everything, despite them all saying Joe Rogan was going to bring them down. So that'll be a good chat. Just bending over and going woke all the time doesn't always pay off for you. And there'll be lots of news study items and other things for me to rant about and go on about tomorrow. So thank you all for joining me today, guys. I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow morning again at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time.